Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic guests, Yvette Forrester and Zac Shander-Kelsey from BNY Mellon. Now, Yvette works as a project manager within the EMEA Regional Change Group. She's actually vice president at the moment and also a diversity champion. She supports the EMEA regulatory governance and reporting programs at Bank of New York, and that was since 2016. She joined the firm in 2008, shortly after the Bank of New York merged with Mellon. Alongside her main duty, she does a plethora of different things. She's co-chair of the Impact EMEA, BNY Mellon's Diversity Business Resource Group, and also involved in many social awareness activities, including chairing the EMEA Community Partnership and for the last 7 years as co-chair of the Impact Community Affairs Subcommittee. She's also non-exec director and chair on the board of DigiBridge, Community Interest Company, which is a social enterprise organisation, and carries out a whole number of activities as well around education and D&I for young people around London. Zac is about to complete his management degree at the University of Bath and will be starting his career at BNY Mellon in August 2020. This is following on from a placement year that he completed, which is all very exciting. And he's also running a startup business, which I'm really looking forward to hearing more about, called Connex. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for being here. My goodness, between the pair of you, you've got some pretty significant accolades. And I guess for our viewers and our listeners who are tuning in today, I wonder whether you could give a little brief synopsis, both of you, about how you came to be where you are today within BNY and also how you came to know each other, because I think you've worked on some pretty exciting projects together.
I've been at BNY for about 12 years now, and I've always been involved one way or another in previous jobs with employee resource groups. And so that is my underlying passion around diversity and inclusion. And I want to ensure that I really do have that sense of being able to help people as much as possible to be their authentic selves. And it comes from being in a corporate environment for over 25 years or so, where many times I'm one of few people. So for me, it was really important to feel I had a tribe, and employee resource groups tend to be the best place where there's a shared affinity. And so I'm going to hand over to Zac, because Zac, you can tell how you came to get involved in BNY Mellon and eventually through to our employee resource group.
Sure thing. So I was at BNY for my placement year at Bath, mostly with a placement. And as part of my placement, I sort of set myself a goal to take every opportunity. And I didn't actually know about employee resource groups. Like, no one tells you about that going into a workplace. You sort of find out when you get there. And I was like, oh, there's extra things I can do where sort of I can actually run my own thing and be responsible for things and make something happen. And one of the employee resource groups that Yvette's in, Impact, which focuses on BAME, I was starting off with a blog series on, and since Yvette was a leader at the time in the group, I was talking to her about how best to do it. And after I execute that project with the team, there's always a next project to do and a next event. And we sort of hit it off in terms of how we work together and our visions and execution. And ever since then, we've been trying to do the next thing. So it's been quite fun.
Fantastic. I absolutely love that. And I can see from chatting to you both before that you've got a great relationship between the two of you. And it's almost, what I think more organizations actually should be adopting is this reverse mentoring type relationship where actually we realize that we can learn from, diversity of, generation, experience and everything else around the periphery. But Zac, you mentioned that you've been working on these various different projects. And I know that there's a student-led kind of non-profit as well called CoronaUnity.org, is that right?
Yeah. That's an initiative that initially led because of the coronavirus to connect people who are lonely, and with most internships being cancelled for students and sort of us ending exams and having a lot of time on our hands, we thought let's mobilise the students and try and do something that would make a big impact. So we set up this phone service, we gained like 100 volunteers, and we were connecting people up. And we've actually started now to, since we've sort of done that project, we're looking at the next phase, which is really a consultancy business for nonprofits to help them fight the change that has come from COVID, digitizing things they could not digitize before, and really making sure that they can be sustainable in the long term in the post-COVID world, which is no doubt going to be different for how they operate in the future. So it's quite an exciting time to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And I hear many good things about you. So I'm sure you'll go off and do some brilliant things. We'll have to keep our tabs on you, Zac. But clearly there's a lot happening in the world at the moment. You mentioned coronavirus there, and it looks like it's going to be a significantly elongated L-shaped exit as opposed to the V, I think, that people were hoping for. We've obviously had the absolutely tragic news of what's happened over in the States and everything that is, happening not only, around the world, but in the UK on our doorsteps as well. I wonder, when it comes to employee resource groups and how you guys are actually pivoting and utilizing these fantastic networks with voices across the board, from students through to seasoned leaders, what you guys are actually doing at the moment to really kind of spearhead these important key pieces happening within our environment right now.
So I know that when we got into shutdown state back in March, one of the things myself and my co-chair said was, it would be really good in terms of keeping contact with our diversity group that we set up a digital cafe. So we've got this, very non-agendered, no items is not open for discussion. Let's talk about how you guys are coping, whether you're having to teach, whatever it is, your children, or how you're coping living by yourself or in a multi-generational household, and are you setting boundaries, what's work time, what's home time, and keeping to it. So, and it's just an open forum, and we've had maybe about 4 of those sessions, and it's just in the diary, and it might sometimes end up with just me and the co-chair talking. But since all the recent events that's been happening in the US, which has spilled over in a way untold, it's been used now as a catalyst to really start airing people's concerns about what they're feeling is happening in the world around Black Lives Matter. And I'm really, really excited as well as mentally exhausted around the whole topic. But I feel we're as a catalyst at a stage right now where, we've gotten the green light from our main guy of BNY Mellon, did a fantastic note over the weekend around it. Our chairman has done the same thing. It's opened the floodgate where people want to talk. So starting from tomorrow, in fact, when we have our next digital cafe, we are going to be ensuring that people have a safe forum just to talk about how they feel. And I think the discussion generates change, which I'm hoping people see as a benefit to make them feel that they are not alone in this, or this frustration, or, people having license to ask, what can I do to make things better? And similarly, hearing those who are affected by it, how are you doing, and what are you feeling like these days? Because I think it's important that we kind of have that conversation. There's no doubt that what's going on in the US will permeate across the world, and I'm hoping, similar to the Me Too movement, that we do have a Black Lives Matter movement.
I absolutely concur. And, really appreciate you sharing thoughts there. I think it is critically more important now than ever before to pay attention to what people are, as you say, feeling, because it's affecting everyone in very, very different ways. But we absolutely must show our solidarity, with those who are around us, our friends who are Black and all different races, as well, to stand together and to show our support, because it has just been going on for far too long. But I think, what's excellent about what you said there is that actually the chairman's taken a stand on this. I think, much with in obviously we've had the coronavirus and we now now have terrible things that have happened over in the States. Actually, those organizations that are not only willing to put their names and their organizations' names against taking a stand toward this, but also making it acceptable for those inside the organizations to be able to share their voice about how they are truly feeling, and utilize some of these brilliant networks that both of you have built to almost be that place of comfort and that place that allows people to really open up.
Because there's been almost like a groundswell. So our women's network are, getting involved. Gen Edge, which is a generational one. Prism, which is our LGBTQ one. And it feels like there is a bit of a movement. And now you can see the real value of employee resource group, which I've always known, but now I think the reliance in consulting us in terms of what sort of comms are coming out, you can see then that they want to make sure the messaging is right, and there is some and there is authenticity in terms of what's going out. So I'm proud to be an employee of the company, and I'm glad that they are looking to harness all this outpouring now that's happening to hopefully affect some real positive change.
Absolutely. And I think, looking at, you do such a lot, Yvette, if you don't mind me saying so, because I was reading through your background actually before this podcast, and you not only lead a number of the employee resource groups or business resource groups, which I actually think is a fantastic name for them because they are business critical in my mind. I think actually the business resource group terminology is excellent, but not only kind of taking on this additional role for strategic and recruitment efforts, because that is absolutely key. It's it's multifaceted, isn't it? When it comes to diversity and inclusion, it is not a one silver bullet fixes all. It's a multifaceted, multi-dimensional issue, and so
it's multi-pronged. And where Zac was a real asset is that we work with a charity that we've partnered with, which works with bright BAME students who study STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and maths. And been working with them for about 8 years, and every year we do like a skills development, mentoring, CV presentation type thing. And I've always said it's about perception. I didn't want those kids coming in, and then similarly, where I pair them with BNY Mellon employees as volunteers to help out, to see it as just a dip in, dip out. So you want to have the sustained embeddedness within that particular charity, because they are, for all intents and purposes, the new talent pipeline, right? They're the new workforce that's coming down the road, and they may look different to Zac, but they, at the same time, should have access, and normally they don't have straightforward access. So we've got fantastic programs where Zac has come through, and I want to see these programs that we're doing, working with these kids, as formidable and viable talent pipeline, and be considered for entry-level jobs. And it's not just a charitable thing that we're doing. These are actually that we're invested in them. So that's been a big passion of mine, and also changing the perception of people that come into contact with them, because Zac, you'll know that some of these kids are just like, wow, just insanely bright. I'll let you speak for yourself.
For sure. And actually, following on from that experience at BNY, we held this workshop which you just mentioned. With Connex, which aims to get students to industry conferences, I've spoke to the charity, and we are delivering some sessions on how do you network, how do you actually go about emailing someone to speak to them, because a lot of these people from these backgrounds have never really been taught the general things, even how to introduce yourself, or the basic stuff, which we can definitely help deliver to them. So it's just that little link there from working with them, and now hopefully helping them in the future has definitely been exciting to do.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I take my hat off to both of you. I think what's particularly brilliant is the fact that not only you're inspiring, educating, motivating future BAME leaders, and like you say, that, building talent pipeline, but also you are enabling this, almost the leveling of the scales by actually, supporting through things like the network, which, let's not underestimate it. Network is absolutely fundamentally important. And again, I'll share a little bit about my personal background. Is I was adopted actually by white British parents, and to a degree I would say had a really wonderful upbringing. We have had a really wonderful upbringing, but certainly not privileged, but still had opportunities far and beyond, I would say, many others. And it's simply recognizing that, not being uncomfortable to talk about what privilege is and isn't. It's just that recognition, because actually, my mum worked for the NHS, my dad worked for an entrepreneur, but actually when I went into that world of business, which I'm sure, Zac, you have now done and kind of dipped your toe in and doing these great things, which is fantastic. But actually, I realized when I got into this world of business that I didn't have a network, and everyone had networks of people or friends or mothers, fathers, etc., in various different places. And look, my parents are the most amazing parents in the entire world, but in the world of business, would they be hugely connected with your FTSE Fortune organizations? No. Absolutely not. And that is, it's not until sometimes you get into that world that you realize there is a massive disparity, and actually you find yourself having to work that bit harder to push yourself up and glean those connections. And connections, the network, is absolutely everything. So Zac, absolutely commend the fact that you're doing this, you built this, and the other things that you're running, given that you haven't even had kind of first full-time role yet. I just think that's absolutely amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you very
and
much.
what's the feedback been from again, the students and also the BAME students? What has the feedback been?
It's been very good. And actually, one bit of feedback, even before I started that, even when we were doing the workshops, like even having someone come up to you at the end and go, thank you, that was really helpful. It actually means a lot. I got into the employee resource groups at the start, not really because I wanted to do something for myself, not for the greater thing. But when I started executing on projects and actually saw like the benefit and people were gaining something from it and it was making a positive impact, I got more and more into it. And I think that sort of social reward in terms of helping someone else is definitely what keeps these things going, because you can't really question making a good impact on someone else. You can't really beat that. So
I love that. It has that sort of trickling effect, doesn't it? Because it's the same way I'll be like, gets people in my team, oh, come on, you can help somebody with their CV, do it. They have this engagement. It's only like a half hour out of their day or whatever it is. They come away from that saying, what a great kid. And, that lasting impression means that when I say, come on, I need some volunteers. Yeah, I'll put my hand up right away. And you've just kickstarted this whole, I call it, family of like people that can help other people in ways that they probably think, oh, I'm just going to my job and that's it. But in fact, you've inspired them through the people that they're dealing with, and that just, it kicks on and on. And I love that. And I've seen that in you, and that's why I'm really glad. So Zac came, and we don't always offer full-time jobs for the kids that come through the apprenticeships. But Zac did, I think he was just like an incredible asset across the board that, we would have been fools if we didn't take him back. That's the way I look at it. And, now you just feel like he's part of the family. And this thing that he learned before, finishing university is something that's now sown a seed that you are definitely just, flowering. It just feels such a fantastic journey that you've had the last couple of years, coming to us and working with me in particular. And, and again, as I've said before, you are a networker extraordinaire, which I have to give you props to. So
Oh, guys, I love this. It's like share the love. It's just absolutely brilliant. I mean, what a great inspiration for those that are listening in or watching in, you know, who whether they have done kind of reverse mentoring schemes, which, you know, whether it's official or not, actually, this is what I feel this is like. Ultimately, it's about relationships. It's about connectivity. It's about supporting one another in many different ways, shapes and forms. And look, creativity and innovation comes out of that. You know, millennials, and yeah, now zillennials. Zac, I know that you are far younger than both of us, you know, are the biggest proportion of the future workforce. You know, we absolutely must, you know, support our future leaders and nurture that talent, because, you know, very different motivations, I would say, as well, from what perhaps business and more, you know, not you know, more archaic leaders perhaps of the past, where actually, you know, the great thing that makes me smile a huge amount is, you know, ever kind of giving talks, whether it's kind of used to the IOD, and actually, you know, did a talk to actually some amazing BAME students. Oh, they're just fantastic. And you know, you just think, you know, what they want in life and in business. And obviously I interview a lot of execs. I'm not saying senior execs do not want this, but their take on the world, their take on the environment, their take on social good and purpose is what I think is going to really spearhead amazing future change within organizations. And look, it makes commercial sense as well. Doing good for business and wider society, that's great for business as well. Makes sense on all fronts.
100%.
Anyway, guys, this podcast is about you, not me harping on, because no one wants to listen to me. So I'm going to move us on. Actually, now I just, you know, I love what you're doing. I think it's brilliant. We need more reverse mentor partnerships. We need more networks like this, but intergenerational networks as well. I think it's, you know, so many different facets of diversity and inclusion, in addition to BAME and race, which I'm very passionate about. There's so many other different forms of diversity, and that kind of, you know, that amazing, you know, differences of mindset and such. But anyhow, you know, talk to me about what the future looks like for some of the pieces that you're doing, not only around the networks. Obviously, Zac, you'll be fully fledged very soon, which is exciting, and Yvette, you're being a real driver to push forward the importance of these ERGs. What are the next steps?
I'm thinking, you know, I'm going to be quite frank, where I felt quite bleak about the future, and that's just from what's been happening recently in the world. So, you know, with the COVID deaths affecting BAME population disproportionately, and as a result, there's a contraction in the economy, or it's heading that way. And so therefore, the opportunities have been lessened. So I do have a slight fear for Zac and his peer group. I do. You know, I have a son that is meant to start university in September, and, you know, he's not keen to do it if it's going to be online. And I was like, no, because university is about the experience. You know, you want to be around people. You don't really want to be doing it in your bedroom, because I would be like, nah, take the year off then. So I feel a little bleak, but at the same time, in parallel, I don't want to take my foot off the pedal. You know, we're doing stuff at work where we're having an alumni launch for these kids that are graduating just now, like Zac, give them insights into the company. We're doing it all virtually. We were meant to do it face to face so people can network with senior leaders. Alas, we can't do that, but we've just flipped it onto the other side. You know, one of our senior ladies, our exec sponsor, in fact, said she'd love to find a few of her senior leaders and mentor some of these kids. And I said, we need to do it as a reverse mentoring thing. You guys need to learn from them as much as they're going to learn from you. So we're going to be running with that. We're looking to see where we can get a round table around discussing salary negotiations, which is very hard for people of color and women. And I think it's really important that we kind of demystify the whole notion of what your worth is, and finding the confidence, and see if we can get some good takeaways with regards to when they're trying to negotiate. So as much as I feel that the future might be a little bit, there is a bit where I'm thinking, don't take your foot off the pedal, have those digital cafes, see what comes out of that, see what we can do to generate, you know, with what's going on right now around representation in the company, which is quite key, making sure we have a lot of senior people of color. So those people that are coming in from those diverse backgrounds can see what they can achieve by seeing the representation in the company at the top of the ladder. So I'm optimistic at the same time, and doing things to kind of keep that in motion.
And to follow on that, I think from the people coming into the workforce, us young people, you may say, are, like you mentioned, are more and more conscious around these issues of ERG areas and ethnicity, making sure there is this representation, making sure there's sustainability environmentally. You know, we're a lot more conscious, I think, as a workforce going into it, and that will mean that we are going to be choosing our companies based on those more and more. And the amount of times I've heard people applying for placements to places that are doing this sort of stuff and not going to places that are not is very much increasing, and people literally do not do things because the company does not support or show support for these sort of issues. And I think as time goes on and more of us join the workforce with this sort of mindset, the better off it will be, especially with the recruitment process, which is very biased towards, I'd say, like people, like white people, especially because these systems of reviewing interviews online using AI is based on a data set which is already biased and skewed. So there's these technologies that are trying to help, but maybe not, but also we can fix that. You know, we can solve that data and bias issue, whereas we couldn't solve humans sitting there in front of people and solving their unconscious bias. So I think as more technology comes into play to help solve our biases, and as more students join the workforce with the view of making impact, not just making money, I think the better off we'll be. So I think long term, we've got a bright future ahead.
And that's why I'm inspired. I'm inspired every time when I hear that, Zac. I really am.
I mean, I absolutely concur. Zac, you articulated yourself there incredibly well. And what you've essentially epitomized is two absolutely core pieces. One, the future generations of leaders in the workforce are not going to stand for organizations that don't just say they're doing good things and pay lip service to it, but organizations that genuinely mean it and value their employees and really believe in business for good and wider society. And, you know, the second key piece is gone are the days where people be queuing up around blocks asking for, you know, desperate for specific jobs, you know. And I think actually, you know, whilst millennials and zillennials have been criticized a little for this, being picky over, you know, where they want to go and being handed things to them, you know, et cetera, I've heard it all before. Actually, you absolutely cannot question their motives and the fact that, you know what, they are going to go somewhere where they genuinely want to work. This is more of a two-way relationship now. This is not a one-way street where it is come and interview and tell me exactly what I want to hear. This is a, well, you tell me why I should join your organization, because that is absolutely what it is, and quite rightly so. Because to keep on to good talent, organizations need to be demonstrating truly what they actually stand for and what they mean, you know, otherwise they won't keep hold talent. And actually, you know, again, you talked about another key point, but let me just quickly say, and I won't say who it is, of course, because of confidentiality, but a good friend of mine who works for a very large management consultancy organization is a huge champion around Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. And he said, looking at their stats, and they are, you know, I'd say they're pretty good on diversity, and certainly this individual, she's very, very passionate about BAME in specific, is when they were looking at some of their metrics, there was huge amounts of diversity at the grassroots level, and in specific, Black males, young Black males, but after a year, they fell off a cliff. They couldn't retain them for longer than a year, and they were going off elsewhere. You know, some might say, well, you know, that's the youth of today, whatever. Actually, it's not. What are you doing internally to not engage this group?
Yeah, because we did a session last year for Black History Month, and it was, you know, we need to talk about race. And I had a couple of the kids from the charity come along in the audience, and he raised his hand asking, you know, or making a statement more than anything, saying, there's this Robin Hood mentality where a lot of BAME kids think like, yeah, I'll get into those big banks and financial services and consultancies, get my money after a year, and then I'm going. Because a lot of it was that sometimes they would sense very quickly, this is even before they're going in, that where is the possibility that I can progress? Where do I see myself at the top of the food, top of the chain, in terms of saying, I can achieve that because I can see that black man up there or that black woman up there in a senior position of power. And so they really have a very limited, they read the scene, already to know that, you know what, I'm going to try and get there, boost my CV, come out, and maybe at the same time, and this is where I think, like you, Zac, you've got a lot of agency where it comes to when you were saying how people are choosing deliberately the types of places they want to work at, but also there in parallel, there's this very entrepreneurial streak, which is therefore like, okay, I know I need corporation to probably boost my CV and get myself started and get the necessary connections. But you know what? I'm also thinking at the same time, if you don't serve my purpose, I'm going to start thinking about my own thing that I can do. And I think your generation is a lot quicker to just say, I ain't got time for this. And I'll, trundle along with the stuff that I'm creating myself. So I think companies really do need to really think about the mentality of a lot of young people now.
Absolutely. And that's why true engagement is so critical. And Yvette, I must just say as well, because I know you mentioned there before, understandably, you are feeling emotionally drained at the moment. You are doing a fantastic job. It is thought leaders like you that make differences to and give opportunities to people like Zac, give a voice to others and make a genuine difference. I think sometimes it's very easy. And one particular thing that really angers me, actually, sometimes someone said to me the other day, I get it quite a lot, is all diversity and inclusion. Well, that's, it's all very pink and fluffy and whatever. And I was like, it's not. It absolutely is not. It is actually one of the most relentless pieces of work that I think anyone could possibly do. Yes, there's lots of things to be championed and celebrated, and there are good things, but at the same time, you have to have your foot on the gas all the time. It's exhausting, it's emotionally draining, it's multifaceted, it's multi-dimensional. There's lots of different facets of diversity, inclusion, visible, invisible, and it's not only needs to be mile wide, it needs to be mile deep as well. So it is absolutely, I can see why it'd be exhausting, to do, frankly, the amount of different things you do and the hats you wear. But, it's because of people and champions like you that bright young talent like Zac and others wants to be in organizations like you are in.
But you know what? It don't underestimate how it energizes me at the same time. Like sometimes I think I'm doing way too much. I need to stop. And my hands are in too many pies, blah, blah, blah. And then I think of something that's like, no, that sounds like and then I get energized and I think that can really benefit them. That can show a new perspective. And you just get carried by the momentum of the ultimate, invigoration you get to change something that you think that doesn't sit right. That looks wrong. We need to fix that. And so I do get fed by it at the same time, but it's more trying to bring people along for the journey and casting that net wide so that you have a multitude and a myriad of types of people that just want to do and get it done. So I think that kind of keeps me going at the same time.
Absolutely. I think you and I are very similar in terms of drive, because I absolutely, what you say there completely resonates. But you brought up a point there very briefly, which I think we absolutely should mention and perhaps discuss, is representation at those senior levels. And obviously this is massively disproportionate, as it also is within a number of other facets of diversity and inclusion. But you look at the Sir John Parker review, which was looking at, I think it's FTSE 100 or 250 when it comes to BAME representation, and it moved 0.6% in a year. And you think, okay, so again, for those who are listening in, why is that? Whether this is new information, whether it is information that you knew already, some of the critical pieces clearly are, look, if you don't see someone, or you have feelings of resonation with someone who's more senior, you can't, as you alluded to before, actually feel that you can one day make it to that place. And unfortunately, there always has to be first, there always has to be those like yourself, Yvette, who are paving the way. But talk to me a little around your thoughts when it comes to representation and, moving the dial on.
You know what?
This.
I mean, representation feels like one of those things, either it can deeply affect you or not. And I must admit, I spent quite a bit of time living in New York. And I remember as a 16-year-old, Miss Perone, my sewing teacher, said, you need to apply for this thing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's an internship where you can actually learn about textiles, since that's your interest. And I remember, because we lived in the Bronx at the time, and I remember going on, I got onto the program. It was like a big deal, because there was only about, 20 kids around the tri-state area that got into the program. It was quite a prestigious thing. And I got there and I was the only Black girl there, the only person of color there. And all the other kids that got into the various, whether it's the Egyptian studies, whether it was in the 20th century art or whatever it is, they all came from like Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue. And my exposure to that didn't make me shirk away. It became just a natural expectation. So for me to be in places where I'm generally the only person of color doesn't feel away. It kind of like, and I think sometimes it happens when, I've got my son a couple of years ago to do his internship. And one of the things that I think he really liked, because I have the more wide networks, he got lots of experiences, is that he said that he didn't really see a lot of people that look like him. And for me, I was just like, oh my God, for me, where I was just like, you just need to get on with it, just roll with it, it's fine. To hear him say that, it kind of reminded me, there are so many kids that would come in and think, wow, where's someone that looks like me? And am I here on my own? And it shouldn't be a hindrance to going forward, but you can see how it can have an impact. And that's why culture is really important within a company, and feeling that you belong at the same time, but also seeing yourself, which I think is really quite key. So I do bang the drum a lot, like that, so what would be the outcome of all these discussions that we're having right now about, lack of representation and need to get more senior people of color? That is, one of the key objectives in terms of now trying to think, how do we redress some of this? How do we ensure that people feel comfortable coming to a place and wanting to stay? Because, as big as I want to get kids into the company, I kind of want them to stay too, right? I don't want them to be put off because they don't see a lot of other people that look like themselves. I want them to stay and also see people that look like themselves quite high up. So it is definitely, representation is becoming more and more apparent. You can see that a lot. Some of these kids who never come into the city, go into places, different corporations and the like. That's why I think apprenticeship programs are quite good, where you can, but again, you don't want them to be in what I call a self-selected role, where it might be just in IT or might be operational. You want to know that there are a myriad of paths that they can actually move towards, and it's accessible, and that they can represent. So for me, it's we just need to plug at it to make sure that we're kind of like, keep your eye on the prize,
Absolutely. And I mean, it's saddening to hear that that's how your son felt, but by the same token, great that he's got a powerful mum who is very willing to be outspoken.
I would like him to listen to me a bit more. I even got Zac to speak to. Remember Zac? I was just like, inspire him.
It's absolutely so key though, isn't it? Because I think you kind of, I suppose, to a degree, fall in one of two camps, and was like, when I was younger, I was always very, very aware of being different. My brother and I grew up in North Yorkshire, in Harrogate, which I don't know whether you know it in the north, but we were the only Chinese children in school, which was not weird in Hong Kong, because a multicultural school came to the UK, and suddenly it was like, oh wow, you're different. And, you know, did I think every day, oh God, I'm different and I'm trying to fit in? Yes. But by the same token, I didn't actually think all the time, you know, is there anyone that looks or sounds like me? Because I suppose I just took it as a given that there wasn't. So in the same way that you described there, that, you know, I absolutely, that resonates a lot. But I also, you know, it concerns me deeply that there are, you know, kids, youth, you know, even people who are seasoned leaders in their roles thinking, you know, actually they've got to pluck up the courage and you know, maybe don't have the confidence to be able to step up or go for that promotion or whatever, because they just don't think that they would fit in. And, you know, I heard a horrifying statistic actually the other day, which is those who are in minority groups or, you know, in a situation when perhaps they are the minority, whatever that might be, is they spend 30% of their time worrying about how to fit in, expending that energy
That's a
on
lot
fitting
of
in.
That's
Exactly. And so again, it comes back to this absolutely momentous business case, other than the fact that actually it's the right thing to do anyway, but it comes back to this momentous business case of, well, hello, you know, your productivity. Well, if 30% of the time was spent exactly going and channeling into work, and we made people, all people, feel that they belong and they are welcome here no matter what they look like, whatever the background is, then productivity would be up massively.
Yeah, it is. God, there's a lot to unpick with this, isn't there, when you think about it?
There is indeed. There is indeed, and actually I know I could be talking to both of you for a very long time this evening, and on that subject I am going to move us swiftly on. I don't know whether you've, well, I know you guys have listened to the show, I should say, to date, the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast show, but what would be great is if we could go into a lightning round where I ask you a series of questions. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer each question, which perhaps is a, you know, also a challenge, not only for you guys but for me as well, clearly. But first and foremost, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you personally?
So for me, it is about the belongingness is the key thing. Like when 30 seconds.
You can have longer, Zac, because it's you.
Thank you. Belongingness is the key, not just seeing people and having the right number of representation. Like, okay, we've got enough of each color here. That's great. We've done it. No, it's not about that. It's about those people feeling like they do belong, which is the harder thing to do. It's quite easier to get just people in, but it's harder to make them feel like this is actually where they belong. So diversity and inclusion has a strong thing on the belongingness for me.
For me, diversity and inclusion is allowing yourself to be authentic anywhere, to bring in your full self anywhere, to being accepted as you are anywhere. So it is not that I want people to be colorblind. I want them to see me as a Black woman and accept that first and foremost, not making any inferences about me, about my background, and allow me to be my authentic self.
Wonderful answer. And it's quite a big question next, actually, but what is your secret to success?
For me, it's around 3 core areas, which is work hard. You can't beat hard work, which leads to you creating as many opportunities as you can. Because the more opportunities you have, the more options you have for one to be the biggest one and to pay off. And through doing all of that, you're no doubt going to fail. So the third thing will be understand that failure is key. You should be doing it, and you should be learning from it, which is probably the biggest thing you can do to lead success.
Completely agree with that. I think mine is being curious. I am generally interested in people's life stories and where they come from and their different interests. I think that feeds me. I think connecting is a massive thing, which allows me to then, of course, speak to a myriad of people to inform my thinking. I think the other thing is that I'm very thick-skinned, so I don't really give too much about what people think. So, or, you know, having a certain level of confidence and feeling comfortable challenging things when I think that smells off. So I think that's helped me a lot, where I don't shy away. I think I've been known as Yeah.
I love that. And I can tell it's great. And who's inspired you both throughout your career today, or indeed your life?
For me, obviously, the classic answers of mum and dad are always an inspiration for, I think, anyone who has them there. But mainly anyone that I see, I don't have a pinpoint person, but I see a lot of people doing a lot of good things. And whenever someone's doing something well and they're achieving something and making an impact, that usually leads to me being inspired to do the same.
So same thing. So I didn't grow up in a nuclear family. My grandmother raised my sister and myself till we were about 14, and then we went to the States to live with my mum. So my grandmother, who was the most empathetic, loveliest person ever, really I think she really instilled goodness in us. My mother, who was just this, didn't take anything, any rubbish from anybody, very strong. I just remember thinking, God, as a woman coming over on the boat from Jamaica in the late 50s and buying her first house in the 60s where they wouldn't give Black people mortgages, I was just like, she was formidable. My mum's formidable. And she currently lives with me right now. She's got dementia. She's had the last 3 years, but she is just a force to be reckoned with. So she's definitely, without a doubt. And my sister, I've got a twin sister too. She is a grafter, resilient, gets on with it, had twin girls at 44 by herself. They're like around, 9-ish now. Just gets on with it. And I love that. I love that when I see that all the time. We're just very much doer types. So we come from a very strong female environment. But then I have to remember that there have been people that have been so impacted. I'd never formally had mentors, but I think through when I was working at Goldman Sachs, there was a general counsel there at the time, Northern type, very quiet with his way, but, one of those that says little but means a lot. He was just, gave me opportunities without, I don't know, we just got on well in a really great way. And I actually have a real affinity for Northerners. So Leila, definitely, I get the Northern thing. I'm actually married to a Northerner as well. He's from Halifax. So there's a bit of a Northern thing going on. And then at BNY Mellon, former chairman, Michael Cole-Fontaine, who, if I tell you what I consider an authentic leader, that's him. Phenomenal, given me lots of opportunities, allowed me to be my person. I think he just liked different. So he was very inspiring, just great leader, was one of those people that saw people. You weren't invisible, speaks to, reception, to the security guards, knows people by first names, phenomenal. And also at the time, his deputy, which was the chief operating officer, who he's the first one that gave me an opportunity to shadow him. And it just kicked off this whole spiral of events where I just had a lot of opportunity to meet with senior leaders and speak to them and get opportunities. And so it's a bunch of people that I can easily say from from the very beginning of my formative years to now, that's had a massive influence. And I continually get inspired by people like Zac. I really do. I'm always like, oh my God, what is he made of? How do you make people like him? I was saying to my son, his name's Chi. I was like, Chi, do you know what Zac's doing? And he's like, oh, what are you going to say about Zac again? So I get inspired by quite a lot of people, and I think it really does. It's one of those things where you just get. I feel quite blessed. I've had a blessed life in that respect.
Thank you so much for sharing, Yvette. I think it's wonderful. And actually, if I may say, you clearly followed after your mother and formidable with everything you're doing. Honestly, both of you, pair of you are real inspirations. So it's been fantastic speaking with you. I'm going to ask you one final question before we say goodbye, and that is, and it's funny, I'm gonna laugh at this actually, is what would you, if you were to go back in time and give your younger self advice, what might you say to yourself, or indeed anyone who was in a similar circumstance? But actually I'm thinking, Zac, you're so young.
Much younger.
Is it applicable? So But anyhow, look, let's go for it. And Zac, what I would say to you actually is, look, what advice would you give to other young aspirational leaders, or those who are embarking, frankly, on going to university or thinking about going to university? So, perhaps your angle can be from that side.
For sure, I can definitely do that. I think I picked up a lot of things through uni, which I wish I knew at the start. The first is definitely, it is not what you know, it's who you know. That is the biggest thing that no one told me at the start of this, and I would encourage any young person to get on LinkedIn, to start building up their network, to start reaching out, and to start just speaking to people, because you never know when the next opportunity might come, as one main thing. And the second thing is just to, failure is still something that I sort of bang on about, because people do get disheartened when things don't work. But I think that's a good thing, because at the start you're trained through school to, if you're okay, you've got bad grades, that's a bad thing. You didn't pass the exam, it's a bad thing. You know, you failed your assignment, it's a bad thing. But those are all just highlighting areas where you can improve. And if you don't fail and you don't try hard enough, then you can never push forward. So as long as you're networking to anyone you can know, and as long as you're trying your hardest and taking every opportunity you can, I think any young person will do well with those two things.
I'm going to be a bit boring and say there's not a lot that I would tell my younger self. I think I've just lived one of those lives where I have very few regrets, and in a way, I just think that it doesn't really bother me as much to have failed, because I feel like just get up, dust yourself off and get on. And I know I have a very high threshold around resilience. So I don't think there's a lot that I can say, to be honest. It's a really weird thing. There's, I don't think I would change much.
Thank you both so much. They're both great answers. And, Yvette, again, I concur with both of you. I think, life is, without getting too emotional here, life is, this constant emotional roller coaster of ups and downs. And I think a lot of the time, very serendipitous. It's those people that we meet that inspire us along the way, that if what happened hadn't have happened, we wouldn't have been where we are right now, and had have been fortunate to meet the people that we have, and to that note, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with both of you. You've both been absolute superstars, and I've been very personally inspired myself through this wonderful relationship that you both have, both very different backgrounds, very different stages in your career, but actually you're both so open, honest, vulnerable, which I think is actually very courageous as well, to be able to share your learnings and to take the approach that actually the glass is half full and every opportunity can be seized for what it is. So I'd say, absolutely keep going at the amazing work that you have done. I'd normally give a summary, but I think actually, what you guys have said there encapsulates things perfectly. The one thing I would say, just to end on, is to those that are listening in today, is not only absolutely critical, I'm sure you've been inspired by the words that we've heard today, but hashtag Black Lives Matter. Please do lend your support, show your support, whoever you are, whatever age, race, religion, whatever. Show your support, be an ally, be a friend, be there to listen. These guys are there listening, opening, welcoming, asking how people are feeling. This is not rocket science. Reach out. We all have a collective responsibility to do this. And, the guys today have absolutely shown that you can make a difference. It is relentless and it is emotionally draining for us all in this environment. Not only have we had coronavirus, but we've now got, the tragic state of affairs at the moment. But actually, a quote which actually I heard the other day, and I thought actually that's very, very powerful, is if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping in a room with a mosquito, because you'll know very quickly that you can make a big difference. And, it really kind of stuck with me. And finally, the power of employee resource groups and networks cannot be underestimated. If you've got a resource group, an employee resource group, business resource group, whichever group it might be within the organization, utilize it, harness the power of the people within there and the different minds and backgrounds that you have, because it is by staying together and standing strong that we will make this out and make our way out of this. And be able to stand together as human beings, because that's what it is at the end of the day. We are all human beings, and I think you guys have just just talked really wonderfully and articulately about all the different facets of what that means. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a great pleasure.
My name's Leila Mackenzie-Dellis, and you're listening to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast show. We're with you every week, but we're here twice a week at the moment due to unprecedented times. If you missed anything at all from today's episode, don't worry, you can catch up on demand. You can watch on YouTube, or you can tune in via any of your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Spotify, and various other apps that you may have. You can also see all the show notes. If you missed anything about any of the important pieces that Yvette or Zac mentioned, their organizations, links to their LinkedIn profiles and such will be in the show notes at the end of today's show. www.dialglobal.org/podcast. And a final note, if you are feeling that you want someone to reach out to, you've got two amazing people here, so make sure you reach out to them, or reach out to myself, reach out to one of the team. Do not, for goodness sake, be a stranger. Take care and see you again next week. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.